Hi, welcome to this chapter plan for the ICND1 book chapter, Troubleshooting IP Routing. Yes, this is Wendell yet again. And in this chapter plan, when you're doing your first read of the chapter, the first section of the two is essentially a review of many topics you've seen before, a few new ones, but mostly a review of things that can go wrong. You know, it starts out talking about IP addressing and what IP addresses you can't use. Host commands, so you can then review, did I leave off the default gateway or configure the wrong value, that kind of thing, or did I configure the wrong mask. It reviews IP routing and how IP routers need to use best match logic. By the way, the book page at the Certskills site has a link to a Techie Topics video that talks a lot about that best match logic. It talks about the Traceroute command. Just so you know, there's Traceroute coverage in this book and in the ICND2 book. If you've got both, it's probably worth going ahead and reading more about Traceroute. Just look that up in the index of the ICND2 book. And the new stuff mainly here is Telnet and how to suspend Telnet connections. So out of all this, if you already remember most of it, read it, review, and move on. If you have some lab gear you can use to test the Telnet and suspend feature, I'd say go ahead and do that while you're going through your first read. So in this first section, either go slow or fast, depending on how much you remember or how much seems new to you. The second major heading in the chapter is a big troubleshooting scenario. You read it, you think, you make conclusions. So I'm not going to dwell on that here, but I will make this offer. If you'll go to my blog listed up there at the top right-hand corner, Certskills, and if you have something you just can't get your head around on this troubleshooting scenario, you have permission to post a question there in whatever today's latest post is and say, hey, Wendell, I got a question about that, and I'll open a new thread to talk about that because I think that's a real useful scenario to walk through for learning. Now, once you finish the chapter and it's time to review, I would say on a blank piece of paper, try to summarize all the rules and exceptions and problems that can occur that you read in the first part of this chapter. And then go back and review and see if you remember them all. Like, what are all the problems you could see of trying to configure wrong things with addressing? What host commands can you use? That kind of thing. For the scenario, I'd say it's too soon to bother looking at it again because you'll just have memorized the scenario. So I'd say ignore the scenario for your chapter review. Then when you get to part review, well, you just finished reading the chapter. So unless you took a couple of weeks to go back and review the rest of the chapters in this part, I'd say you don't really need to pay a lot of attention to chapter 15 during part review. Let it percolate, let it sit on the side till you get finished with the book and get to your final review. Now, during final review, you really ought to think about troubleshooting as an end to itself. There are question styles on the exam that require you to troubleshoot, particularly simlet questions, where the question starts with a mostly configured network with 1 or 2 or 3 configuration errors, and your job is to figure out the symptoms, interpret the symptoms, figure out the missing configuration, and that kind of thing. To prepare for that, I'd say ask yourself about common mistakes with addressing, with hosts, with routing, in other words, the forwarding process on routers. You should ask yourself the meaning of what a ping and a trace command tell you, and common mistakes with RIP. Most of that can be reviewed by looking back here at chapter 15, but you definitely want to spend some time on that here in your final review. So hope this helps. I'll talk to you soon.